Thank you, Kate. Today's lectionary text is Psalm 78, verses 4 through 7. This psalm is written in the voice of a teacher. It's largely composed of narrative, a telling of the story of God's way with Israel. The psalm's central purpose is to inform, correct, and nurture the faith of the congregation, and its central concern is with the past bearing on the present and the future. The past is the past remembered, not researched. It's a past of tradition about events experienced and reported as interactions with Israel's God. As we celebrate our church's past on this Homecoming Sunday, we honor the great cloud of witnesses who have gone before us and whose legacy still positively impacts our present and future. Please follow along on page 468 in your Pew Bible as Pat reads.
We will not hide them from their children. We will tell to the coming generation the glorious deeds of the Lord and his might and the wonders that he has done. He established a decree in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our ancestors to teach to their children, that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and rise up and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. Thus ends the reading.
Thank you, Kate, for that beautiful, beautiful song. I'm excited. She's the director for next door at Miracosta in the middle school, and last year, I don't know if Monsignor Barry knows this yet, but last year American Martyrs got the choir before their European tour. Guess who's going to get them for a concert before they go to Europe this year? Manhattan Beach Community Church. Yeah. So, a little friendly competition there. Teach your children well, the Father's hell slowly go by. Okay, we'll just stop it right there. Yeah. Some of you would like to keep singing this song, but the title of the message today is Teach Your Children Well. And Graham Nash, later of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, wrote the song Teach Your Children in 1968. And he wrote part of it in response to his difficult relationship with his father, who was jailed, actually, for receiving stolen goods. But what inspired Nash to complete the song was what he saw in a gallery exhibit in Santa Clara, about 350 miles away. Nash was struck by a photograph of Alfred Krupp of the German arms magnate family. Krupp's photo was displayed right next to Diane Arbus's shot of a 7-year-old boy with a hand grenade. Nash knew that the Krupp family had provided all the German war material for World War I and World War II. Can you imagine? And the artwork's provocative message actually inspired Nash to finish what he'd started, realizing that we must teach our children a better way because civilization itself depends on it. Little side note, Arnold Newman, a Jewish photographer, was commissioned 5 years earlier by Newsweek to take the picture. And initially he refused because of his own Jewish heritage, but also he knew that Krupp was a convicted Nazi war criminal. But eventually he decided to do it, and here's the reason why he did it. He did it so he could get revenge. Because Krupp didn't know what kind of photograph he was going to take, right? And so the resulting portrait became one of the most controversial and significant images of its time. Krupp was furious, of course, when he actually saw the portrait. Nevertheless, Newsweek published it, and it became Newman's most famous work. So these two photos, displayed side by side, up in a gallery in Santa Clara. Is it up or down, Santa Clara? My geography is not. Yeah, up, good. Is what inspired Graham Nash to finish the song, Teach Your Children, ostensibly so they don't grow up to be like Krupp. Dr. Madeline Levine has written a New York Times bestseller by the same title, Teach Your Children Well. Anybody read it? Parents, grandparents? Great book. Pick it up. I did. It has all kinds of wonderful stuff. She also wrote a book before that was a New York Times bestseller about the challenges of raising affluent children in affluence. Yeah, another good book to read. The subtitle is Why Values and Coping Skills Matter More Than Grades, Trophies, or Fat Envelopes. She writes, this book is dedicated to my mother, Edith Levine, who blessed me with unconditional love, passed from generation to generation. Her gift to me is also my children's inheritance. That's so true, isn't it? That's so true. Often the values and the beliefs that we receive get passed down generation after generation. The psalmist certainly knew this. Pat's already read it. He commanded our ancestors to teach their children that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and rise up and tell them to their children so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep His commandments. So our parents' gift to us is also our children's inheritance, if we're blessed to have children. I'm fortunate to have 3. So you can see this reflected here at MBCC. We have 13 families that I counted this past week, 13 families that span 3 or more generations. Dr. Levine printed this epigraph at the front of her book, and it's a nod, of course, to Graham Nash. You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by. Dr. Levine argues that what parents are clamoring for now are solutions. And she speaks across the country, and this is the collective mantra of her audience. Dr. Levine, what should I do? And her answer in a nutshell, teach your children well. Well, today's Homecoming Sunday, a cherished day in the life of our church when I get to stand here in the pulpit and reverently, I don't have a robe on, so I'm not as reverent maybe as I normally look, but reverently shame those of you who have been gone all summer. And it's easy to spot you because you're smiling and healthy and suntanned and revitalized. Honestly, you're a sight for sore eyes, and I'm glad you're back where you belong. I forgive you. I forgive you for frittering away your entire summer, frolicking in the sun, traipsing here and there and posting on Facebook so I have to see it. All sorts of grand destinations around the world. I forgive you. Back in the good old days at MBCC, things were different. Many of you had jobs that kept you in town for most of the summer, and it was the senior minister who left for the entire summer. And you all had to stick around and listen to each other preach. I'm told that Homecoming Sunday was originally a return party for Reverend John Calhoun. Oh, good, he came back. Let's have a party. What pastor today can take off all summer long and upon his prodigal return be welcomed by a church and they even kill the fatted calf for him? No wonder Reverend John Calhoun found time to write a fantastic 100-year history of our church. Every one of you should read it if you haven't already. It's packed with important information about who we are and to whom we belong. Our church family's history reveals that we who are on the road have had a code that we've lived by, mostly. Our church's code for over 100 years has been all about children, teaching children, loving on children, empowering children, investing in children, helping children's confidence and character through musicals and song and dance and Christian education. That's been the code for over 100 years. Reverend Calhoun writes, the first stirrings of a Protestant church in Manhattan Beach came from a small group of people interested in a Sunday school experience for the children of this new shoreline community. Does anybody remember what year that was? 1902. Anybody know the month? August. Isn't it interesting? August. Here it is, August. Here it is, Homecoming Sunday. The first Sunday school sessions were held, as I said, in that building, the bathhouse. I'm just curious, did any of you take a bath in there? No, we don't have anybody old enough to say yes to that. Or if we do, just keep your hand down. Yeah, so that was at the bottom of 11th Street and Strand. And long before our church was established in 1906, long before any worship services were conducted, our church founders made teaching children the top priority. Unfortunately, the first church building was built on sand using a redwood foundation, which was laid in February of 1906. Prior to 1914, this is very interesting, prior to 1914, public school, Gary was our speaker today again, wonderful speaker at ADG. He had been a principal at Maricosta for I don't know how many years. How many years was it, Gary? Are you here? Is Gary not here? There he is. How many? How many years were you there? Maricosta? 23. Okay, that's enough. If you were at John Calhoun's memorial service, you know I can say that to Gary. All right, land the plane. A long time. Gary was there a long time. But it's interesting because he has invested his life in public schools and education. And here we are, prior to 1914, public schools in Manhattan Beach were conducted at our church, Gary. Community church. That's what they called it back then. Community church. Isn't that cool? And that was in the original building on 9th and Highland. Apparently, our founders were unfamiliar with Jesus' teaching in the Gospel of Matthew and Mark. Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain fell and the floods came and the winds blew and beat against that house and it fell and great was its fall. Well, such was the feared fate of that first building. In 1916, it was in danger of literally sliding down the hill. Sound familiar? I feel so bad for all those Palos Verdes people and the chapel that had to be dismantled. And now they've discovered a second level of shifting. So the first level that they thought was going to be able to fix it isn't. They have to go deeper, like 300 feet farther down to take the water up. So anyway, yeah. So this was the feared fate of the building. And in 1916, it was in danger of sliding down into a 100-foot drop-off. Can you imagine? The shifting sand dunes raised considerable havoc, not just for our church, but for the whole community. Can you imagine sending children to public school in a church building in danger of sliding down a sand dune? Yeah, that was back before seatbelts, too, and kids had to wear helmets when they rode bikes. How about sending your children today to Sunday school in a bathhouse? Yeah. Things have changed. The times have changed. But what has remained the same is an embedded code from the great cloud of witnesses that have walked the road before us some 122 years ago. If you listen real carefully when you walk over there, either on the outdoor walkways or through the classrooms or on the playground, you might just hear a faint, distant whisper, "Teach the children well." Today, our Christian Education Building hosts the year-round education of over 350 Montessori students. Here's a photo of our dedicated and wise facilities manager, Craig Torrey, sliding back the Montessori sign to reveal a bronze plaque with a picture of Jesus surrounded by children. A scripture reference is also displayed. "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these." Our church family gathered 25 years ago on Homecoming Sunday for an annual picnic. But before they partied, before they killed the fatted calf, or in the case of today, the fatted pig, because you got pulled pork down there, they toured and dedicated the new state-of-the-art Christian education facility, which was dedicated to children of the new millennium, 1999. Yeah. Reverend John Calhoun writes, many heroes emerged in this demanding process, including the congregation as a whole. I'm inspired by many of these heroes, and I'll tell you why. Because they still are active after 25 years. John Mack. If you're here, just go ahead and stand up, would you? John Mack. There he is. Jim Belt. Jim Belt, where are you? I'll tell you where Jim is. He's probably out cooking burgers because he was here this morning. I saw him. Yeah, please stay standing. Mike Zarro, Bruce Cook, George Condi. All right, yeah. Let's give him a big applause. Yeah. These are the heroes that John Calhoun called out 25 years ago, and they're still here. In fact, the moderator at that time, Larry Humphrey, the moderator, top prestigious position in our church, guess what he does now? You can see him every week with a rake or a broom or a trash can in his hand. He's still serving. He's still serving, humbly serving. And he was here this morning, setting up for all of you to go eat and enjoy a delicious meal after the service. By the way, the church's campaign that made it all possible had a goal of raising $800,000. Does anyone remember what we actually raised? Nobody? Over $1 million. Over $1 million. Yeah. The campaign was aptly called Forward in Faith. That was 1999. I learned this past week, because I looked it up, that $1 million in 1999 is equivalent in purchasing power to about $1,888,000 today. Imagine the sacrificial love and commitment it would take for us to give the equivalent of what was given in 1999. If you listen carefully, while strolling through the Christian Ed playground or walkways, you will still hear a distant whisper of the faithful who've gone before us. Teach the children well. Oh, teach the children well. Friends, there was a time in our church's not too distant past when the Christian education building was filled with 140 children every Sunday morning. They were nurtured in the Christian faith every weekend. Jane Munson, I saw her husband here this morning at ADG. Jane, are you here by chance? Jane Munson was the Christian education chairperson at that time. Many of you remember those days, and your children benefited from excellent teaching in a variety of wonderful music and drama programs. I'm committed to making children a priority again at MBCC. Are you? What will it take for all of us to be inspired, to dream God-sized dreams for MBCC again? You know, I'm confident that we all want our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to receive the very best here at our beloved church. Surely we all want increasing numbers of children to create fond and lasting memories of singing, and like Sid and Roxana, that's going to go with them their whole life. The character formation of the confidence. How many of you have the courage to stand before the congregation and sing your heart out? Right? That's magic that's happening here. Right? Singing and acting and dancing and worshiping and serving and vibrant ministry. Don't we want that all for our children and our grandchildren? 3,000 years ago, Asaph, how's that for a name? Asaph, singer and musician at the Jerusalem temple during the reigns of David and Solomon, wrote today's text that Pat read. It was actually a song to be performed in worship. And I wonder what inspired, we talk about what inspired Graham Nash to sing his song, Teach the Children. I wonder what inspired Asaph. I've got some ideas. let me remind you what he said. He commanded our ancestors to teach their children that the next generation might know them, the children yet unborn, and rise up and tell them to their children, so that they should set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep His commandments. Now, some scholars believe that this psalm was written during the divided kingdom. All right? So that's after the northern kingdom had been exiled, and that it was written to a nation that had forgotten, in danger anyway, of forgetting God. Sound familiar? A nation divided, a nation in danger of forgetting God. Graham Nash could see this coming way back in 1968. Children steeped in war instead of steeped in love. Children being raised to glorify war. I was one of those kids. My dad is a retired colonel in the. He came home. We loved getting the fatigues and the helmets and the toy guns and threw toy hand grenades at each other. We loved it. Like so many singer-songwriters of the 60s, Graham Nash put music to what was on his heart. We must teach children something else. We must teach children peace and love. Otherwise, our whole civilization is in jeopardy. Church, the stakes are too high for us to ignore the whispers emanating, sadly, from empty classrooms this morning. If you go over to the Christian Ed building, there's not a single soul over there. Every classroom that's filled during the week is empty on the weekends. We need to teach the children well. We need to teach the children well. Now, the Renewal Task Force will soon update all of us on what they've learned, and this will help to clarify, I know, and to prioritize our church's values, and even help us to define success for today so that there's greater alignment between what we believe is so important, the code that we've had on the road for 122 years. Help us to see how we can align that code, our values, with what we say is important, how we staff, how we resource, how we fund, how we prioritize children. Graham Nash got it right 60 years ago. You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by. Our church founders wrote such a code into our church's DNA. We ignore it at our own peril. I believe our founders got it right 122 years ago by making children the highest priority. And I can't think of a better day than today, Homecoming Sunday, to renew our commitment to doing whatever it takes to heed that call, heed that whisper. Teach the children well. Teach the children well.